Becky here. Welcome back to my channel. I am here to read the Narnia series again. I read this like 10 years ago and I'm so excited to dive back into them. So I have the 7 books here. And I know they might look like they're out of order, but that will be explained in the next clip about this random reading order. So I am excited to be jumping into these books. Full spoilers for the whole series because they are older and I want to be able to talk about them in depth. So if you don't want spoilers, you've never read these books before, then go read them or watch the movies and then come back and watch this video. I was watching Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin and another booktuber friend of his, Mel, I think. They both read this series together, all 7 books. All 7 books together, and they really hated on the books. So I already know, I've already read these books, I like these books, but my husband was kind of listening to the video and he's like, why is this guy just reading these just to hate on these books now? Like, he's really not liking this. And I kind of laughed. It seemed like all the Christian aspects of it are the things that Gavin didn't like about it and that Mel didn't like about it. So I was just kind of like, you're reading a Christian book and it's very much in your face, a faith-based Christian narrative. So, like, what do you expect going into it, right? I go quick because baby is screaming. Why, Luigi? You're scratching my chair, and I don't appreciate that. So, I will be talking about the faith-based stuff in these books as I see it. They also mention some of the problematic things in these books that C.S. Lewis wrote. And I'm not saying that these books are perfect. They are from the 50s, I believe. 40s, 50s that they were published. Copyright 1950. So I'm sure there are problematic things from that time. And I'm going to chalk that up to the time it was written, really. I'm not trying to ignore the problematic things, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a good story or a good book or has a good message to it, you know? And you have to take into account the fact that it is a faith-based Christian book for children. So yeah, I'm going to jump into reading these books, and I hope you will enjoy this journey with me. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read these books or watched the movies and what your favorites were. Okay, so I want to reread the 7 Narnia books. Here's my dilemma. They are numbered, as all series should be, in chronological order, with The Magician's Nephew being number 1.
Yeah.
Chronologically. This is how I read them originally when I got these like 11, 12 years ago. This is how I read them. Chronologically.
As it should be.
No, apparently not. So I looked up how to read the Narnia books. And I found NarniaWeb.com. So there is publication order, which is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Prince Caspian. The Voyage of the Dawn Trotter, Silverchair, The Horse and His Boy, Magician's Nephew, The Last Battle.
Oh. I always thought Magician's Nephew was the latest one. Like, that was the last one published.
No.
Like, I thought it was Last Battle, and then he made...
No, he did The Last Battle after.
Was...
So, chronological order is The Magician's Nephew, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, The Horse and His Boy, Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Trotter, Silverchair, Last Battle.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's the good and proper way.
Okay, for many years, both orders were in print. Chronological order became the worldwide standard after HarperCollins took over the publishing in 1994.
Oh, HarperCollins.
And The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the first written and published. It's generally considered the best introduction to Narnia by scholars and fans alike. Jesper! Most scholars disagree with the decision to renumber the books and find it the least faithful to Lewis's deepest intentions. On the official website of C.S. Lewis, Dr. Charlie W. Starr claims that Lewis scholars almost universally agree that the original published order is superior. Jesper behind you.
I'm just laughing at Lewis.
Scooch over a little bit. Go the other way. Look at him. Jesper!
Hi, buddy.
I'm taking a video here. Do you see yourself? Hi!
Hi!
The original published order is superior. He suggests that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is more initially captivating than The Magician's Nephew, which I would agree. Initially captivating.
Yeah.
That certain lines in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe do not make sense when the book is not read first. And the Nephew's Magician has greater mythic power when read as a prequel, not the first. So, what order do I go in? Publication or chronological?
The Narnian scholars, or the Lewis scholars, I guess.
Lewis scholars.
They think publication is the better one?
Yes. That's
But
the way
you're talking
Lewis
about
intended
introduction,
it.
but you're not being introduced to it. You're rereading it.
Yes, I know, but this would be a different way of experiencing it. I was going to do it with the superior way of reading it.
I would do a publication order, because then this way you can re-experience it differently.
And that's the way Lewis
Now that's the way I want to read it.
That's the way good old Mr. Lewis intended it to be.
Really?
I bought these books at Value Village for what, $7?
Something like that.
$9? Okay, it was either like, I always think it's like 9 books and it cost me $7, but it's 7 books, so I think it cost me $9. Because these are at Value Village back before they started pricing books individually. Children's books were always like so much money, and then you buy 3, get 1 free. So I got 1 free, and then the other ones, like, they were priced cheaply because they're children's books. Cheaper than adult books, anyways. And yeah, this cost me like $9, and they're all in pretty good condition. They might not be the best covers and stuff, but I think I'm gonna go with publication order. So I just went out and did a little bit of shopping. Had to get my son a pair of pants. Tried to get my other son socks for the baby. No, nothing. Not even girl socks over like 6 months old. So that's awesome. And had to get diapers and fun things like that. And some school snacks. Now I am just waiting at Walkbox for my lunch. I am starving. And I am reading, as you all know, because you clicked on this video, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. I am pretty much halfway through. Right there. So they are obviously now in Narnia, and they have met Mr. and Mrs. Beaver and Edmund. They have just discovered that Edmund has left and gone missing, so now they are going to travel and see if they can find... They're looking for Aslan, basically, at this point. I've read this book before. I enjoy them. I really like the movie and stuff. I'll probably watch the movie later, maybe with the kids. It's a good, like, Christmas, wintry movie to watch. I'm surprised to be already halfway through, and like these books aren't very long. It's under 200 pages. I'm already halfway through, and like we haven't met Aslan yet. I thought we met him sooner than that, but the adventure is just really starting now. The one line that I like in here, they're talking about Aslan and that he's a lion, right? And she says, "Is he quite safe? I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion." "That you will, dearie, and no mistake," said Mrs. Beaver. "If there's anyone who can appear before Aslan without their knees knocking, they're either braver than most, or else just silly." "Then he isn't safe?" said Lucy. "Safe," said Mr. Beaver. "Don't you hear what Mrs. Beaver tells you? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe. But he's good. He's the king, I tell you." And, of course, Aslan in this represents Jesus, right? And I like that C.S. Lewis put that he is not safe, but he is good, because I think people feel like following Jesus is like the safest thing you can do, and it is the safest thing in the sense that if you believe that God has your best in mind, no matter where in the world you are, no matter how dangerous your situation might be, if you're following God's will, you are quote unquote safe. But like, you could die, but the worst that's going to happen if you are a Christian and a believer, the worst that's going to happen is you go to heaven and you meet Jesus. Like, your real life is going to begin for eternity kind of thing. But people just think like, oh, when I become a Christian, my life is going to be good, it's going to be happy, it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows, and that's not true. There's still going to be hardship. The Bible says in this life you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. I like that he adds that, like, he's a lion, he's not safe, but he's good. And there is a distinction there, of course. And there is a scene after Lucy has gone into Narnia and everyone thinks she's crazy. They are talking to the professor guy who like owns the house that the children are living in. And the older children are trying to figure out what's going on with Lucy and why she's so adamant that this Narnia thing is real. And so they're talking to the adult, and they think that maybe Lucy is going mad. So he's like, a charge of lying against someone whom you have always found truthful is a very serious thing indeed. We weren't afraid it mightn't even be lying, said Susan. We thought there might be something wrong with Lucy. Madness, you mean? Said the professor quite coolly. Oh, you can make your minds easy about that. One only has to look at her and talk to her to see that she is not mad. And then he says there are only 3 possibilities. Either your sister is telling lies, or she is mad, or she's telling the truth. If you know, C.S. Lewis makes that claim about Jesus. Either Jesus was a liar, he was crazy, or he was being honest. And that is something you have to come to a decision about Jesus on. If you think he was just lying out of his mind, or he's telling the truth. And then people go based off of that and like do their own research, and they make up their own minds on faith and if Jesus is one of those 3 things. So if you know that about C.S. Lewis, then you would catch that he put that in here about Lucy. So I thought that was interesting as well. Anyways, I got a few more minutes just waiting for my lunch. Baby's getting upset, so we'll go back home, relax for a couple hours before picking up the kids. So I have finished reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I ended up listening to the last half of this as an audiobook. I don't know how I feel about the audiobook narrator. He wasn't a bad narrator, but I didn't like all the voices he had for his characters. Like, I started listening to the audiobook when, right around, like, just before Santa Claus comes in, and I didn't like his voice for Santa. And the witch, the White Witch, just sounded more like a guy than anything, I guess. I don't know. But I enjoyed the book, though. This is a reread for me, so I know what's going to happen. Plus, I've seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie is very much taken straight from the book, basically. I never grew up reading these books. These are not nostalgic children's books for me. I did not know about these until much later. This movie actually came out when I was 18, and I saw this in theaters, and I watched the whole thing and had no idea that it had anything to do with faith, with Christianity, Jesus, nothing like that. Sorry, my baby's playing in the background. He's being very noisy, very rude. When I was watching Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin reading these books and talking about them, he was talking about like when Aslan shows up, everything just gets easier. Everything just gets better. It's just, Aslan just fixes everything. Yeah, that's kind of the point of the story. Aslan obviously is an allegory for Jesus, and Jesus, we can't do anything on our own without the power of the Holy Spirit, without Jesus in our lives. That's kind of the point of this, and how Aslan kind of just fixes everything. But he also expects them to do so much as well. Peter gets the sword, and he is expected to fight. He fights the wolf, who's like the lead in the White Witch's army. And Aslan tells him to fight her, or to fight the wolf, and he kills the wolf. So Peter has to prove himself. And they do go to battle. Aslan is killed in this to save... Edmund goes into Narnia and betrays his siblings by going to the White Witch and says that I will bring them to you, because she is afraid that when the 4 children, sons of Adam, daughters of Eve, come into Narnia, then her rule will end and Aslan will return. So she wants to capture them and make that not happen. She wants to rule. And Edmund goes into Narnia after Lucy does and meets the White Witch. That's the first encounter that the White Witch has with the children. And he says, like, yes, I will bring the other ones to you. So the other 3 encounter Aslan first, while Edmund has been captured by the White Witch. It's kind of like a life for a life. Edmund belongs to the White Witch now, and she wants his life because he kind of betrayed her, I guess. I don't know. He betrayed her by not bringing the siblings to her. So Aslan negotiates with the White Witch to take Edmund's place and he dies in place of Edmund. And that part of the story is obviously very biblical, and a lot is taken from the story of Jesus and the crucifixion, the part of this book. And that's the way C.S. Lewis intended it to be, of course. And you see that Aslan goes to his execution willingly. He goes without trying to put up any kind of defense for himself. He goes silently. He is mocked and ridiculed, beaten. They shave his mane, which is like a lion's glory. They shave that. They muzzle him. And it's just a very, very brutal scene. Just like in the Bible, how Jesus was a lamb led to the slaughter. How he had the crown of thorns placed upon his head and like driven basically into a skull and dripping down blood. They slapped him and spat on him and mocked him. So it's a very hard scene to be reading about. It's crazy like what was children's books back then versus now, and there's still a lot in children's books nowadays that can be quite, may or may not be brutal, but can be very hard hitting. And I think middle grade makes me cry more than any other age category of books. I am working on a cross-stitch stocking that I started last year. It's a little house. Can I find the pattern? No, I already had this filled out, so I'm just finishing that part, but I cannot find the pattern for this, so very, very frustrating. These books are very short, and they move along very quickly. It all happens very fast, like they meet Aslan, he's executed, and he comes back to life because there's a deep magic that the White Witch and Aslan are talking about, and she says, "You at least know the magic which the Emperor put into Narnia at the very beginning. You know that every traitor belongs to me as my lawful prey, and that for every treachery I have a right to a kill." So Edmund is the traitor, and she has the right to his life. "And so," continued the witch, "that human creature is mine. His life is forfeit to me. His blood is my property." And then she's speaking of Aslan, says, "He knows that unless I have blood, as the law says, all Narnia will be overturned and perish in fire and water." "It is very true," said Aslan. "I do not deny it." The Emperor is God. And it says, "Work against the Emperor's magic," said Aslan, turning to her with something like a frown on his face. And nobody ever made that suggestion to him again. And it's talking about God can't go against his own laws. God cannot lie, and God set laws in place, and he can't go against those. God is faithful, he is truthful, and he can't go against what he has said. So that's like kind of like what Aslan is saying, like, I can't go against the Emperor's magic, this deep magic that would take Edmund's life. And then after he says, "I have settled the matter. She has renounced the claim on your brother's blood." What they don't know is that Aslan has given himself in place of Edmund. And then they talk about a deeper magic. So, and you can see the picture here of him being like tortured before being killed. Okay, so when Aslan comes back to life, the table, the stone table where he was killed, cracks. And that is obviously representative of the curtain. So there's a temple veil that was put in place so that people could not come into the presence of God because of sin. God can't be in the presence of sin. So when Jesus died on the cross, that curtain, that veil was ripped from the top to the bottom. It was ripped in two. So that, I believe, is like representation of that. And the ripping of that veil is now that Jesus has died and covered our sin with his righteousness, we have access to God now. We can be in God's presence. God can be in our presence now. So that's what that represents. And then they're talking about, what does it mean? Like, how is Aslan back alive? "She would have known," so the witch, "that when a willing victim who had committed no treachery was killed in a traitor's stead, the table would crack and death itself would start working backward." C.S. Lewis isn't hiding his message here at all, right? But just knowing, like, a willing victim. Jesus knew where he was going. Jesus knew what he was doing and why he was doing it, and that he was following the Father's will in his life. And that he's in a traitor's stead. Jesus took our place on that cross. That's pretty obvious. The allegory between this and the Bible, like, it's pretty obvious. It's a good story for Christian children that it is laid out plainly in a way that they can understand, especially if they are Christians and are taught the Bible. I enjoyed my rereading of Narnia and jumping back into this world, and I am excited to continue on in this series. If you have read this series, if you grew up reading this series, if you have just watched the movies, comment down below. Let me know what your favorite book is in the series. And are you a Christian or not? Do you read it? Do you enjoy it for the nostalgic purposes? Do you care about the religious context of it? I read this originally like 10 years ago, and I was a Christian when I read it. Like I said, I watched the movie when it came out, and I didn't connect it to religion at all because I knew nothing about Christianity or any religion. I just enjoyed the magical story of Narnia when I watched it as a movie. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you when I pick up Prince Caspian. Bye!